welcome back to ollygolf.com. I'm your host and founder, David Igono. Today we have on John Fote, principal at John Fote Design, a golf course design company that is one of the most renowned companies in the United States, or North America for that matter. John, how are you doing today?
I'm great, thank you.
Now, before we go down memory lane and get some pearls of wisdom and some recollections of just your career in golf in general, let's start. Well, actually, before we even start about your start in golf, you're a golf course designer. What is the coolest hole that you've seen recently that you didn't design?
I love golf courses. By the sea, obviously, everybody likes being by the ocean. It's sort of the ultimate in golf course design. And so when you go to places like Pebble Beach or Cypress Point or Bandon Dunes, or you're lucky enough to be in Scotland or Ireland, those are the greatest places. And there's any number of great holes that fit that particular thing. I haven't been to Pebble in a little while, but I was there about a year ago, and there's a number of golf holes there that are just fantastic. Or being at Cypress Point, being out on the point in the ocean where you're, it just seems like you're right there in the middle of the world, so to speak. You're playing golf, but at the same time you're enjoying some of the most beautiful scenery in the world. I think that's what is really fun. I mean, there's a number of great golf holes that don't have that, obviously, as we're witnessing at Augusta National has spectacular golf holes as well. But there's something about being by the ocean and that just really, for me, is really spectacular. I just love that, and I've been fortunate to have traveled to places like St. Andrews in Scotland and just enjoy that every single time. I never get tired of it.
So what is and that's pretty straightforward, and that's awesome. As far as there's something about water and golf and dare I say that sea breeze that just kind of calms your mind and your psyche.
Well, it involves all the elements. It's because golf is a game that is played in the most beautiful surroundings in the world, and being able to create that is one of the most interesting jobs in the world. And I'm just saying, probably the greatest palette known to man is when you can combine, a little bit of wind, elevation change, sand dunes, grass. The whole mixture is just the greatest. It's where golf started, and you can understand that because obviously it's just the greatest place to be when you're playing golf.
Mm-hmm. So, let's jump right in. How'd you get your start in golf? What first attracted you to golf?
It's interesting. When I was a young boy, I just loved sports, and I had a grandmother who had just started playing golf, and she took me along to play when I was about 7 years old, and I just really enjoyed it. I didn't need a team to be able to play. I didn't need a basketball hoop or something like that, even though I enjoyed all those sports. Golf just was such a great game, and it was, of course, you never conquer the game. It generally gets you one fashion or another. But she got me very, very interested in golf. It was very competitive. I enjoyed it. You didn't have to be even playing somebody else. It was kind of you against the golf course. So I just got attracted, or I guess addicted to the game of golf when I was a young boy. And I just, playing with my grandmother, it was fun. It just kind of hit all the right spots.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to interview Oliver Horowitz, who wrote, I think the name of the book is American and St. Andrews, American Caddy in St. Andrews. Apologize for not knowing the title off the top of my head, but he got into the game with his father. And then while going back and forth to St. Andrews, I believe it was every summer, he had a special relationship with his uncle, which sort of solidified in his childhood, just solidified his relationship with golf. And you can never underestimate the bond and the fibers that are created by somebody slightly older than you. Sometimes it's, like a grandmother or uncle, or sometimes it's a brother, or maybe it's peers. But when you learn how to play the game with somebody else who loves you or you have an affinity with, I think it's almost an unbreakable bond.
I couldn't agree more. It's fun to be out there and playing golf, and there's so many there's so many different elements to the game. I mean, no two golf holes are exactly the same, and you're out there and you're trying to figure out this obstacle course with somebody that is, like you said, is either older or special to you a lot of times. And most of us enjoy playing even today with friends and family or business associates or whatever. That's what's so great about golf is it's a game, it's a sport that people enjoy together as a group, or even by yourself, just being, out there in the morning. I've played many rounds by myself when I was young, and I just enjoyed the idea of being out there and trying to make my way through what I call an obstacle course, and it was just fun, and learning how to do it, and the ecstasy of hitting a good shot there's just nothing like it. It's just fun.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. So let's talk about you actually playing golf, your amateur career, I guess we can say, through college. That spark that was ignited by your grandma, how did that carry you through to, college?
Well, for me, I was fortunate. I played, I wasn't a great junior golfer or anything. I was good, but I wanted to get better. That drive to try to improve and be better was there. And so, but I was good enough that I was recruited to several different colleges, and golf was not as big then as it is today. And, I was, awestruck because I had the opportunity to meet Johnny Miller, and I actually stayed at his house for a couple of days and got recruited to play golf at BYU, which is where he went. And I met some of the guys who were going there ahead of time, and so I thought, this is kind of a cool group of guys. I really, kind of like that. And so I was fortunate that I did that. And, meeting someone like Johnny Miller, just won the U.S. Open, just not, not very many years before that, was really cool. And what a great opportunity that was, which I still remember that. So anyway, I went to school, and I just, we used to go to do our classes in the morning and play golf every afternoon. It was just, it was fun. People don't realize how much fun that can be. And so anyway, I and as I improved, and got better, it was just great. And sort of towards the end of my college career, I sort of blossomed and became a good amateur player, and highly ranked, and was able to win some great events like the Pacific Coast Amateur at Olympic Club, and ultimately play on the Walker Cup team and win the U.S. Amateur the following week. And so those are memories that you cherish in a lifetime. So that was really fun.
Now, and I definitely want to talk about your pro career, but briefly, I want to ask you about your time in college. Obviously, there's a completely different atmosphere, not just in golf, but in college golf, from when you played till now. It's crazy. I mean, it's maybe been 2 or 3 generations, and I would say sports in general, especially college sports, it's a full-time job.
It is.
And from your experience, somebody who's played in college and somebody who played on tour, and it is now. I kept reading that you're enjoying a successful second career. What are some of your? I don't want to use the phrase work habits, but I want to dig into your perspective just in college, because like you said, you weren't an awesome amateur golfer, but you had a drive. And I think that, me myself, I played college football, and I think that the athletes who understand that talent, or dare I say privilege, either in getting a scholarship or playing on a good team or going to a good university, is not what's going to propel you long term. It's your work ethic, it's your drive, and that all points to your perspective. So if you could expand a little bit more just on your perspective in college, because I've interviewed a lot of college coaches, and maybe that's why it's on the tip of my mind. But I think that the perspective of young golfers is just like with any other sport. They see the guys, the McIlroys, the Jordan Spieth. They see all these guys, and they want to get there yesterday, but they have to understand that their path isn't necessarily going to be the same.
No question about that. I was very fortunate in that I was able to play on an extremely good team, which that pushed all of us to work harder. And we learned quickly that, the team that I played on, especially my last 2 years, all six people, all the top six guys, all went on the PGA Tour, which in that era was very unusual. But in today's world, that's, these teams are stocked with more good players. We beat most everybody all the time. But the biggest competition was just trying to beat the guys on your own team. And it pushed us. We all had it pushed us to get better, to work harder, to, do the things that were necessary to prepare ourselves to play well. And that meant, working on your game relentlessly. For me, I was fortunate. I had a dad who taught me how to work. And so, the other thing was, I was there to get a degree, to get a good education, but also to work hard in everything that I did. And unfortunately, a lot of kids, like you said, think that it's just talent and it just propels you to the top. And that really, talent is important, skill, physical ability, hand-eye coordination, whatever it is, you need some of that. But the ability, the drive, and be able to focus your mind and your game to get to that next level and continue to excel, that really takes drive and desire. And I was fortunate. I was able to observe some of that in some really great players. And when I went on and played on the tour, to be able to watch how hard and how well-focused someone like a Jack Nicklaus or a Tom Watson was under pressure, because that's where it really all matters. Anybody can hit great shots on the driving range, but being able to call upon that and be able to focus your mind and get the best out of your ability when you are at the toughest point, that's something that takes focus and skill. And if you see that in someone that's good at anything, it's fun to watch someone who is really good. I don't care what they do. It's fun to see someone who is able to excel and why they excel, and how they work hard and they achieve those things. It's a really great process. And I think no matter what you do, you should strive to be the best at what you do. And that takes extra effort, And sometimes in the world we live in today, everyone thinks it's easy. What people don't realize is it's taken years. I'll go back to something that Ben Hogan said in his book many years ago about this great shot that he hit at Marion in 1950. And it says in the book, he says, and people talk about it as, and this is him speaking, that it was almost inspired. He said, it wasn't inspired. I'd been working on that shot since I was 12 years old. For the last 25 years, 30 years, I've been hitting golf balls every single day so that I was prepared to hit that shot. People don't realize the work and the time and the effort that goes into that. There's no guarantee that you're going to be number one or be the top. And it's that focus, that ability to do it at the toughest of times is what's the difference in great and not so great.
No, I totally agree with you. Now let's move on to your pro career, and you know what? Let's start at the bottom. And I say that not at the beginning, but doing anything. You just talked about working on your game and having that drive and desire to be the best, to push yourself. Let's start at the bottom. What were some of your challenges just stepping on tour? And again, to preface it, I hope I'm not making you feel old or anything like that, but the tour that you played on is a little bit different, just as far as exposure to how it is now. I hope that's a fair assessment. But some of the things that you went through are more than similar. They're the exact same, I would say, to now.
That's really true. I think the thing that's hard for people to understand is when you're making that transition from being and I was at the top of the heap as an amateur, and when you walk on the tour, I mean, there are hundreds of guys who are good, and they've worked hard like you have, and they don't. There is. I wouldn't say there is no goodwill. Everybody is polite and gentlemanly, and I enjoy that about golf. People aren't trying to kill each other. But the bottom line is these people are competitive. They're selfish in the sense that they want to exceed themselves, and if that means beating your brains out, that's exactly what they want to do. I mean, and so getting used to the weekly travel and grind, it's different. When you're in college, you have a coach who's helping you, you have other guys, and, and even playing big amateur golf, you're playing 10, 15 tournaments a year, and it's great. You pick your spots. When you go on tour, there's a routine every week. You are spending money every week to try to make money. And it's just a different environment, totally different environment. And, you're either going to excel or you're going to be gone. And that's really what it is. I mean, it's the ultimate in, I guess, free enterprise, so to speak. I mean, if you don't work and you don't excel, you don't eat. And, I mean, that's just the way it is. And today is different in the sense that the money is 20 or 30 times bigger. So back in that day, I mean, it's like, you listen to a Ben Hogan or a Sam Snead, and I am old enough to have known both of them. I mean, man, they had to play well just to be able to get to the next event. It wasn't like that in my day. You could still, I mean, you had a year or something to make it. Back then, I mean, there weren't sponsors. There weren't any of those things. But today is as different from my day as I was to, the Ben Hogans and the Sam Sneads in the 40s and 50s when, first prize was $500. I mean, it'd gone up. But today, players are great, and they're on that stage. A club contract using a driver might be $250,000, $300,000 a year for your average players. Back when I played, you didn't have any of that. I mean, you weren't paid hardly anything. When I won twice on the PGA Tour, the total prize money I made for those two events was like $81,000. I finished, wow. I think I finished 30th or 31st on the money list, and I think I made $108,000 that year, which was really good. Today, that would be $2.5 million. And, wow. I mean, it's a big difference. Golf has gotten bigger, and quite frankly, I'm glad I had the chance to play when I did. And I experienced a lot in a very short career before I screwed up my spine. But I had a lot of incredible experiences, and I wouldn't trade those for anything. Would I like to have that career today? That would be phenomenal. I mean, you could retire after 6 years on the tour today if you'd had that. And so I'm just saying to you, I think it's cool today that guys do get the attention, make the money, and if you're one of the top 30 in the world at what you do, I mean, you should make a pretty darn good living, especially when very few people can do it. And so I just think it's great that the tour has evolved to where it is today. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, but when you think about it, I mean, they pay some baseball players, $20+ million a year to play baseball, and they only get to bat like 4 times. It's not like they bat every time, and they can play all the positions in the field either. So, I mean, you look at that and you just go, oh my gosh, that makes no sense. It's not like basketball where Michael Jordan could literally handle the ball every single time down the floor. Baseball players, there's 9 guys on a team. It's just amazing to me how they can pay those guys that much for somebody that might bat 4 times a game. And succeed 30% of the time.
I mean, a quick aside, because that, depending on your perspective, you can have a negative or positive view of, pay, wages or salaries or extensions or contracts. But the bottom line is, for me, growing up in a team sport dynamic, I either played football or basketball growing up. You're mentioning baseball. I mean, I think total Miguel Cabrera for the Tigers, he almost got a $500 million contract extension. And
I know it.
Am I here to say he doesn't deserve that, or that's too much money? No, that's not. I mean, good for him.
Yeah. Maybe that's what the market will bear. It's just like Tiger Woods there for a couple of years made $100 million a year. I mean, you look at that and you just go, "Are you kidding me?" I mean, but you know what? That is what the market. They're not going to pay him something that he can't, And when you look at that kind of stuff, you go, "Wow, that's amazing."
Yeah, and my thing is that is that a lot of money? Yeah, that's like the gross national product or the gross domestic product of more than a handful of countries. But that being said, the reason why I'm so fascinated by golf now is that even when Tiger was at the top of his game, raking in Lord knows how many millions of dollars, he still had to prove it on the golf course. And I guarantee you, he I was told by a webtour.com golfer that it was the best golfers really only win 10% of the time. Think about that. They're playing every tournament and they're working hard. But if you don't have the right perspective into your efforts, then results that you do get are going to crush you, whether it's a win 1 week or you get cut the next 3 weeks or whatever.
Right.
It really is a true there's a true wheat from the chaff analogy as far as in golf or in any individual sport for that matter. I think especially more so in golf. I mean, it's you versus the field versus the course versus yourself. And there's whatever you get paid, you definitely earn.
I think in golf, yes, I've always liked that about golf is that if you don't play well, it doesn't make any difference who you are. You're not. I mean, look at Tiger Woods' year this year. I mean, I know he's been hurt, but he hasn't been able to do anything, and he hasn't made any money. He's probably 500th on the money list right now. And I'm just saying to you, whereas Miguel Cabrera, it doesn't. I mean, it does matter. I mean, that he would play well, and I'm sure he will. He's an amazing player. But I mean, if he doesn't play good the next 5 to 10 years, he's still going to get his money. In golf, you aren't. And so there is always a natural drive to do better. And, I mean, You look at some of these guys like Alex Rodriguez. I mean, are you kidding me? They're still having to pay that guy $25 million a year, and I mean, he's just been awful. I mean, with all due respect, I mean, the last 3 or 4 or 5 years, he's been terrible. I mean, his real worth has been maybe a couple million a year, and he's been paid 25 to 30 million a year. And you just like, oh my gosh, if that were a golfer, he'd have made nothing. Nothing. And so I'm just saying to you, at least with golf, it doesn't make any difference. You're going to earn it, and all of those big contracts that you make off the golf course, you're going to lose all of those in a fairly short period of time if you don't continue to perform. I mean, very few people are like Arnold Palmer that are 85 years old, and because they did it for so many years and people like them so much, they still make 20-something million bucks a year. Just their name is worth that. Very few players are like him or Michael Jordan. But if you think about it, they earned it. I mean, Michael Jordan won 6 NBA championships, was an amazing player. Arnold Palmer was one of the greatest ambassadors for the game of golf and won many major championships. And, I'm just saying, those guys earned it. But there's a lot of guys who don't, and they still get paid. I mean, it's amazing to me. So.
Yeah. Now, before we get off into a sports conversation, let's get back to John Fote on tour. You mentioned your spine and some of the injuries that you had. How did you first overcome those injuries, and what did it do as far as your perspective towards your career?
Really, it was really several different things. I only played like 5.5, 6 years on the PGA Tour. And I while I enjoyed them, several things happened to me. Yes, in Memphis in 1985, I, for whatever reason, did something to my neck. And between my 5th and 6th, I created a disc problem, which ended, in all likelihood, ended my career. I got it a little bit misdiagnosed in the beginning, and it just really wasn't handled correctly, so I suffered with it for a couple of years, and I ended up leaving the tour. But part of the other perspective was, back when I played, as we talked about, you didn't make a lot of money, and I had a wife and 1 or 2 very small little children, and I just didn't like being away from them for 3 to 4 weeks at a time. And so really it kind of diminished my drive a lot. And it really was frustrating. Back then you did travel with your family some, but it was tough. You take a 1-year-old and you try to go from city to city. It's hard enough when you're an adult, okay, and you're there with your wife. But when you play golf and you're trying to have your family tag along, and you're not a multimillionaire. Today they can fly around in private jets. That's one of the great things about the tour and making the money, is now you can go home and for a day or two, and you're never out of touch. When I played, you left for 3 to 4 weeks, and you didn't come back home. And, your wife's at home trying to take care of small children, and you're gone, and you're feeling disconnected. And so, quite frankly, it just really wasn't the best situation, anyhow. And so it wasn't like I was just, I won't say it just killed my career, but it certainly gave it a different perspective of what was important in life. And and so anyway, for me it was a series of things. It was the injury, which I just couldn't seem to get fixed. It really changed my game a bit. And it was the being away from home all the time, and making no money was tough when you're hurt, like we talked about. And so all of those things just sort of drove me away from the game eventually. And I know I'm kind of the exception. A lot of people will grind out their careers forever. But, I just had other things. I always had other things I wanted to do with my life rather than just play golf your whole life. I knew when I got on the tour it wasn't something I was going to do for 40 years. For instance, I just didn't see that. I remember when the senior tour came out in that time, and I was like, I'm not sure I would even want to do that. I remember thinking that, and so for me, it was a different perspective. I wanted to do some other. I was interested in business. I really had no idea I would ever be involved in design, but I did get involved, and I just loved it, and it just became a passion. And so for me, it evolved. It was not something. I have a degree in accounting. I would have gotten a degree in landscape architecture or something if I ever thought I was going to be in golf architecture. But it was something I never even thought about. I enjoyed it without really knowing it when I was young. And so it's just something that evolved, and it's just, it's been the greatest thing ever for me. I enjoy design more than anything. It's very hard work. People don't think it is, but it's very, very hard work, and there's a lot of difficult, tough moments. But the truth is, it's just one of the greatest jobs ever.
Well, and that's a perfect segue. So me being a golf newbie, one of the reasons why I wanted to interview a golf course designer or a golf course architect is because, to the untrained eye, it's like, oh, well, you just develop land and you think of a crazy course, and it's not like that. Yeah,
I wish it was. It's not.
Don't get me.
It's kind of like watching a player win the Masters. Boy, you didn't see him for all those years that he worked on his game, did all these different things. It's way different than what people think it is. What we do is a lot more work than people ever realize. Those opening day things and stuff like that, they sound great, but there's so much more work into it. It's just it's amazing how much more work there is than people realize. So anyway.
Well, and that leads me to ask, a question. You have 3 qualities for an outstanding golf designer. Could you go over those? Because I feel like if people heard that, they would be. It's probably one of the few. Well, maybe not say few because I don't really know, but it's one of the most intriguing intersections of creativity, sports, and just, dare I say, math and raw numbers that I've come across in a while. And it's challenging. So, what are
it really is. For me, I have broken it down to the very most raw element that it really is. For me, I think there are 3 things that are absolutely critical to be able to do golf architecture. I think, first of all, you need to be able to have the ability or enough training, and there's very few people who do golf architecture, and there's no colleges who teach it because there's so few of us. Why would they do that? There's not a need for another 150 golf architects every year. They aren't. There's 40 or 50 guys in the United States who do 95% of the work, and so that's really what it is. And so for me, you have to learn the technical side. There are certain fundamentals that go along with any business. You have to understand drainage. You have to understand how to build greens. It's the technical part, how to develop a set of documents, all of those different things. And those are things that you can learn. In other words, they're technical things, but you still have to know them. I'm in the process of developing, plan documents for a project right now. It's a very complicated major renovation project which involves drainage and greens construction and grassing and what trees to be removed and how to do it. All of those different things go in it. So you need to have the technical skills. The other thing that I think that you've got to have is an imagination. You need to be able to see it before you build it. It's not magic. It doesn't just happen, okay? You need to be able to have the ability to imagine things or strategies or how this golf hole would look in this location. And that takes experience and then being able to apply that experience and imagination and understanding that things aren't black and white in golf. They just aren't. They're different colors and forms and shapes, and you have to be able to imagine those things and be able to communicate that to someone who is doing the construction or working, depending upon whether you do some of it or, I don't do much of the construction. I prefer to have really talented people who do that and be able to direct them. So you have to be able to communicate that, have an imagination. And the third thing, and this is something that, so many people think they don't understand why this is important. But the third thing is a history perspective of the game of golf. Understanding the game, I'm not saying you have to have won the U.S. Amateur or the U.S. Open or something like that. You don't have to have been at the top of the world. But you have to have had enough experience with golf to understand why things happen the way they do on a golf course. Okay, I can reflect back on many different places that I have played golf, whether it be the opportunity to have played in the Masters or different events, or have played just golf at St. Andrews or something, and have experienced that. That understanding of the game of golf is often overlooked because we've gone through this era where you had to be a landscape architect. That was the only way you could be a golf course designer, which is absurd. It is totally and completely absurd. It's not magic, but understanding the game is critical. I mean, can you imagine being a basketball coach if you hadn't had experience with the game of basketball your whole life, or whatever it might be? So my perspective is, and there are people I'm sure who do not agree with me, and I think they're dead wrong. You really have to have a firm understanding experience with the game of golf. You just have to. There are things that happen on golf courses, shapes and forms that work, some that don't. And I think that you get that from a perspective of the game. And that's, for me, that's a critical. So if you were to take those three elements, the technical thing, having an imagination, and understanding of the game of golf, you've got a pretty good chance of being able to do golf architecture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's, I'm doing my research, and I went to your company's site, and just reading that, I was like, yikes. That's a high bar, a high standard, but I don't think it should be any other way. And I'm not a golf course architect by any means, but I think that if you're going to, you said it earlier in the interview. I mean, if you're not going to do something all the way and to be the best at it, why do it? I feel like if you leave out any of those three characteristics, you're not doing the game, the players justice at all.
Right. I just think it's. I see people do things on a golf course, and I can tell immediately they just don't understand golf. They just don't understand that. First of all, it makes no sense doing what they're doing. I mean, placement of bunkers, shapes and forms of greens, aesthetically how they work together, all of those things are critical. And if you don't have enough experience and you don't understand the game of golf, you're just going to botch that up. I'm telling you. It would be like having me design a basketball floor. I'd want to put bunkers in it, so the guys would miss them. And, I don't know anything about it. I never played at that level. But I do understand the game of golf. It has been my life. And so for me, it was a good and fulfilling transition from playing to being able to be a designer.
So, and that leads me to my next question. So, having played on tour, having had a decent playing career, like you said, at the end of it, your perspective and your drive was diverted elsewhere, which I feel that any athlete or any competitor in any arena of any sort, if you could admit that, then you can sleep at night. You know, it happened
Right.
the way it happened, and you did your best with what you had at the time. But now in your new career, your second career, if you will, of being a design architect of the game of golf, because I would imagine that you know, you have many opportunities, whether it's to create something from scratch or to renovate a course or to consult or to do whatever. What is the one thing that, well, maybe not one thing, what fascinates you the most as far as a challenge where it sort of feels, and it may not be directly applicable, but when you're playing there, you know that you have to get, you know, a certain score, you know, you have to bring a hole. Like, is there anything comparable in that regard, or is it just a completely different?
Well, I mean, when you're playing golf is different, okay? And people think because you're a good player, you can be a good designer. You have one goal when you're playing golf: shoot the lowest score and beat everybody else. Okay, that's really what the goal is to shoot the lowest score. When you're a golf architect, you have to blend those different things. You have to create something that's exciting and fun and will make people want to play it all the time. It'll have to work. I mean, if you build a golf course that looks good but doesn't drain or something, it'll be a mess, you know. So there are different elements to everything that you do. Being able to balance all of those elements out correctly. I mean, you can have too much imagination. I remember one architect who built, you know, greens in the shape of a mermaid or something. When I look at that kind of stuff, I'm just like, oh my gosh, I mean, what in the hell? That's just, you know, ridiculous. Or they build greens where they slope too much and there's no hole locations on them. So having that kind of being able to control and keep yourself in balance is the absolute critical thing in the game of golf, in golf architecture. There are many wonderful things that can happen when you're building a golf course. And some of them you can see immediately, and some of them not so. You have to be there and experience it and understand it to be able to make all those things work. So from my perspective, that balance is so critical to being able to develop a neat golf course.
Now, my last question for you, I just want to thank you for coming on to the show and just sharing with us. My next question, my last question is, so you have an imagination. You have, I would imagine you have multiple projects that you're either working on or that you're concluding or that you are going to launch in the near future. Without divulging anything that, you know, us, the common public, doesn't need to know, is there a project that you're working on that is, dare I say, going to push the envelope in a manner that is intriguing for you?
Be honest with you, I love new challenges. I mean, it really stimulates the imagination, gives you an opportunity. That's why I have not tried to be so much regional and just work in one area. I've had the opportunity to experience different places all over North America. Like I said, I just think that there are some interesting opportunities out there, both in renovation and new, that are coming along, that will come along. I mean, a lot of the newer golf courses have all been stalled because of the economy that we're suffering through. And it's still going to be a while before we're doing that. And we overbuilt golf courses in this country. So there are some challenges and things that are coming along that are really going to be fun and interesting. And I think, you know, for me, I probably would even entertain at this point to venture out into, you know, a foreign country, you know, to be able to go someplace like a China and build something without all of the regulatory rules that we have. I mean, I'm working on a project in the East right now that, I mean, I see all the government regulations and stuff, and it's so absurd that you just sit there and you just go, who in the world thought this stuff up? You know, it's like, you've got to be kidding me. some of the stupid things that you have to do to satisfy a bureaucrat's non-understanding of what you're doing. And it's like you're speaking a different language, and it's just hard, because when you look at that stuff, you're just like, oh my gosh, it's just crazy. So anyway, I'm just saying to you that I guess I would like to step out of that a little bit, because I do the right thing on my projects because it's the right thing to do. I don't need a bureaucrat telling me how to do my job. And I think it's just silly. I really enjoy the opportunity to work on projects that have a lot of cool natural features, and I still have hopes that I can do a really neat project on the Oregon coast where I'm from. I'm hoping that opportunity comes along one of these days, because I like that blending of the environment with all those other different things. And I'm a guy that likes to use what's there versus bulldoze everything out and create something different. I love working with the natural features of a piece of property. I think we all have to be mindful of Mother Nature and what it is. And I've learned that over the years. No matter what environment you're working in, you have to learn about that environment and how it works and why. We have an obligation to do that as designers, because we're creating something on top of a piece of property. And so for me, I love any project where I have the opportunity to work on something that's new and interesting and different. And I love learning about those things. I think it's fun. And so for me, that's, I've never, ever not enjoyed my job every day that I've worked on it. And there are days when it's more frustrating than others just because of, some of the rules somebody thought up or something. I guess I'm just whining a little bit. But when you look at that stuff and you ask them, it's like I had a gal from a government agency asked me why I wasn't making the fairways at 95%, compacting them to 95% Proctor. I mean, it's like, aren't you just building a road here? I'm like, we're farming, okay? It's closer to farming. We don't compact everything so you can drive a car across it.
Wow.
But I mean, I just looked at her like, are you kidding me? I mean, do you have any clue what you're even talking about? It was just almost embarrassing, It's just, and I've had that a few times, and it's part of the job. You deal with it, but you just look at them like, are you kidding me? You have absolutely no respect for anything we do you? And so anyway, I just get it. That kind of stuff just blows my mind sometimes.
Yeah, and I feel that anybody who is committed to what they do and they put in extra time to understand what they do, and they maybe more important than anything, aspire to be great at what they do. They're rubbed the wrong way when a certain detail is made to look like it's not important. Just like the shot that Ben Hogan said that he'd been working on since he was 12. It's not there. It's not something that just came out of the blue. It's part of the overall picture.
I know it, and you get with them and you just say, look, I know what I'm doing, okay? I'm happy to explain it to you, but don't dictate to me how to do this. When you have no frame of reference, you've never done it before. You're trying to put me in this pigeonhole of grading a road. I'm like, wait a second. We have to get on the same planet here. And sometimes it's just mind-blowing, I mean, I don't hate the government or anything like that. I love the United States, where we live and everything. But sometimes the rules become more important than what you're doing, then it's ridiculous, I mean, there's a certain amount of respect and things that go with that. And we just need to understand it. And I don't care where you're working, whether it's in the middle of anything, wherever you might be. There are certain things you have to respect and understand and do your research on, and But that's part of the fun of it, at the same time. I love it. I think it's great. And I just, I enjoy all of those different elements. And there isn't any part of it I don't enjoy, other than when somebody tells me how to do something when they have no frame of reference at all. That would be like me walking out in the middle of the NBA playoffs and instructing the players on how to shoot. That would be just the most absurd thing on earth. And so I'm just saying to you, it would just be absurd. And we get a little bit of that in our business, and some of it, I guess, is needed because we need to understand what they're trying to do. I don't have a problem with that, but when there's no respect for what you're doing, it's very frustrating. Because I'm on their side. I'm trying to do it the right way. I'm trying to learn and understand it just like everybody else. But there just really isn't any room for being silly like that. That's all.
Well, we're at the end of the interview. John, I truly appreciate you coming on and talking about your career and just the challenges of being a golf course design and architect, and just honestly being true to who you are and what you believe in as far as what you do. I think those people are becoming more and more few and far in between. But I want to thank you for coming onto the show and just sharing, your perspective.
Thank you. Well, it's just mine. Other people have different perspective, and I respect that as well. And everybody, I think, just needs to follow their own path, and hopefully make the world a little bit better place. I don't think I'm making a big difference, but it is fun. I enjoy working. I enjoy being productive, and those things. I hope to be able to do that for the rest of my life. I think it's fun. So, thanks for your time.
No doubt, and we have to do this again sometime. But thank you for coming on to the show.
Not a problem. All the best to you.